Hey, Nation, Harry here, coming to you from a heat dome over Austin, Texas. It's very hot, so I'm getting a lot of work done inside. More importantly, I'm joined with Nicholas Ashford from Fordhouse over in London in the UK. So, Nicholas, how you doing today?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. It's also pretty hot here, and we love to talk about the weather in England. There's about a 2 degrees difference, where it's either too cold or too hot. So we're comfortably on the too hot side today.
Well, hey, I want to turn over to you. You're going to talk about the three stages of a MSP acquisition. So go for it.
Sure. So I think the easy way to think about it is the pre-deal, then the deal itself, and then kind of post-deal, which is primarily around integration. So those are the three buckets. It makes sense to probably take them sequentially. So that first bucket, pre-deal, what's this about? This is about valuation. This is about how do I get the maximum value for my MSP, or how should I think about value? And I think not all MSPs are equal. So what it comes down to, the way we think about it, a lot of it's around revenue quality, which for us means those revenue lines, what are they and how valuable are they? So recurring revenue tends to be more important than non-recurring revenue, although there's some nuances within that. Pretty clear why. Because if I buy a business and I pay a premium for it and I know it's recurring revenue, I don't have to. I know that I have a security level. My risk is reduced because I know that revenue's there. If it's non-recurring, I have less confidence it's going to be there next year. It's got to be regenerated. This is stuff everyone knows, but then within that, there are certain buckets that are more interesting. So let's take recurring revenue. Microsoft licensing. Yes, it's recurring, but it's a commodity. The client can go and get that from somewhere else. It's not defined. There's no sort of margin difference. It's a pretty boring recurring. On the other hand, support contract, if you've got a 5-year support contract for this many seats, that's you delivering a service. It's sticky because they get to know you. The client doesn't have an IT department, so they're reliant on you. That is a great foundational piece of recurring revenue that you can then sell other services on the back of. So even within recurring, there are interesting ones and non-interesting ones. And on the non-recurring side, we call VAR or hardware. It's just tin. It's commoditized. There's very little margin on it. They can go and get it from somewhere else. So not that interesting. What can be quite interesting, though, on the non-recurring is some of that kind of professional service work, if it's in the right area. If you're doing some cool Azure stuff, not just migrations, but actually kind of optimization and management, those might be one-off projects, but actually they're quite sexy. And if they're layered on top of a client that's already got a support contract, now that's interesting non-recurring. So there are nuances there. Just to make it really difficult, I think an actually good tip for MSPs, I'd say there's a category called repeating. So you have non-recurring, recurring, and repeating. And that's sort of a gray area in the middle. But if an MSP can prove it to a potential acquirer, that then gets put into the recurring bucket. And what I mean is, let's say there's a business that buys 10 laptops off you every month because they have a refresh cycle. And so every month for the last 3 years, they bought 10 laptops. Yes, it's not recurring, but you can kind of say this is a known and proven repeating purchase. And then that bucket can go towards recurring. You can get some extra value for that. So I think that's a really interesting one. And so as an MSP, I'd be focused on repeating and recurring. Recurring is obviously your baseline. Typically, we wouldn't look at a business under 50% recurring. And I would say 60%, 60, 65 is about average. 75 to 80, you're topping out at. Normally, you only get that through, hosted services, private cloud. That gets you that gets you there. But I wouldn't want to go beyond that, because actually you want a healthy mix of really interesting professional services you're selling to those.
That's a really good question. I'm into portfolio diversity and startups, and I don't want to mislead you. I have put a little sofa change into the market. Probably wish I hadn't, but I am about diversified portfolio for the risk and so on. And what's interesting is some conversations I'm in with vendors that support SMB Nation, and they're new to the MSP community. They say they want to talk to somebody, a telecom did this, that we want to talk to someone that's, a 100% MSP with recurring revenue. And I said, I've actually never seen that in my life, because when you talk to the MSPs, there's always the old lady in the senior citizen center that you bill by the hour and you charge her a lower hour. There's always dad or mom or the old lady or the old account that didn't convert over for reason. You know what I'm saying? I've never seen 100%.
Totally. And I'd argue if you've got 100% recurring, you're missing the opportunity to do some cool non-recurring for those clients. So I think there's a good mix there, but obviously the higher the recurring, the more confidence a buyer will have. So those I think are really the key thing for value is kind of looking at that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, let's go to stage 2. So that kind of summed up stage 1. So stage 2 is we go through the actual acquisition.
Yeah. So, just in terms of what a look and feel and the kind of process stages. So, typically, you'll have an introduction, or maybe, that might be facilitated through a broker, or maybe it's a cold email or a friend, or, whatever it is. And that's a case of getting to know each other. And I think that phase is really, for me, about fit. It's less about the numbers and stuff, but you're talking to them, you're thinking, because what any niggle now, down the line is going to be traumatic. So a big watch out for me is, if we send over an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, and it's a very standard doc, and people come back and you spend a week niggling over it, it's going to be a nightmare when you do a deal, right? People have got to be sort of pragmatic about this, and there's so many twists and turns that you've got to be fairly. You just got to get on with the person, if I'm going to be honest. So I think it's fit first, and then typically some businesses do it differently. The way we try and do it is we have about 12 questions that we ask, very high level, but that allows us to get to a ballpark valuation. Because what we don't want to do, so many businesses I speak to, they've been dragged through 6 months of talking and information, and they still haven't really got to a valuation, and they don't know if one valuation, their expectations are here and the value they're going to get there. So we very quickly, within a couple of weeks, try and say, look, ballpark figure, this is what it is. And if it's in the right area, then it warrants more work, right, and more effort. But if the mismatch is here, then you can shake hands. It's not been no one's lost too much effort and time or distractions, been distracted from it. So I think that's an important point. And I guess at the end of that point, you're signing an LOI, a letter of intent, or in the UK we call it heads of terms. Typically, you try and keep it light, maybe a 1-page or 2-pager, the 10 key points of the deal. So valuation, is there any deferred? Is there an earn-out? Is it cash-free, debt-free? Who's staying on? How long is that period of handover? So just the key kind of planks of the deal, if you like.
And I would ask you, a question about the fit, because I'm big on that. And in fact, it takes me back to when I went to my first job out of grad school. Well, my job in grad school was in the savings and loan, and I was in IT, thank you. But then when that got done, they moved me over to lending, which I didn't like. And they had a phrase in lending: character, capacity, and credit, in that order, right? That's how we looked at it, the savings and loan. And on the character front, I not only do I totally agree, but it's kind of a funny story. In '07, a large integrated media company was talking to my company, SMB Nation. Would have loved to have continued the talk, but the market crash was already hitting of '08, so they had to pull back. And my coach, my neighbor who's done some M&A, was coaching me that, Harry, you got to go in with the story, and it maybe was authentic, maybe not, but you have to go in these meetings and go, oh man, if I just had more resources, I could do these other things, and he's coaching me on the language of this. And I guess there's some of that. I guess you have to sell yourself.
You do, you do have to sell yourself, and I think you've got to believe in what you're doing. But there is a fine line between selling yourself and sort of overcooking it. And I think the two areas we always see people overcook it. One, they say, I'm not involved in the business at all. And then it's like, in the meeting, their phone's going off 15 times with sort of, oh, help emails. They hold all the key customer account relationships, and you're like, okay, so not quite. And the other one is, they're selling here, and their forecasts for the next 2 years are this. And I always say, if it's a hockey stick now, why are you selling? Hold on 2 years. Your business is going to be quadruple the revenues according to you. So I think there's a balance between, absolutely, you've got to sell a convincing story, and the buyer wants to believe in it, but it also has to be grounded in truth. There's only there's only so far you can kind of push it.
That was
a careful balance.
And I was young and dumb, and I guess I was too caught up in being authentic, and which is important. But any event. Hey, let's with the time we have left, let's do stage 3, post acquisition and integrations.
Sure. So in terms of integration, what I call it the M&A iceberg, right? So what everyone sees and talks about is that white tip is the deal. That's the beginning. Everyone's excited about it. They're talking about it. Wow. But actually, underneath is this hulking iceberg that isn't seen, which is 6 months to 2 years of integration. And if anything's going to sink your ship, it's that stuff under the surface. That's going to be the killer.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be, integration is a skill unto itself. Too many times we see people say, oh, wow, we've brought these businesses together. Now I'm going to give it to a manager. Please integrate those businesses. Well, I mean, you wouldn't give an HR manager a task to go and sell some MSP services. It's a completely different skill set. And so I think, you've got to, ideally you have dedicated resource, but certainly it can become a big distraction, and it can be painful if you get it wrong. A couple of easy examples. I've seen it. Yeah. And I think the biggest issue is a deal looks great on paper, Excel spreadsheet, perfect. But you've got one business that is used to being micromanaged and the other business which have full autonomy. You bring those businesses together, that is a cultural bomb, right? And it's going to go off. And, you've got to fix that. So that's all the hidden stuff. And I would argue that the key number one reason why integrations fail is a lack of a focus on people and culture. And that is coming from someone who was obsessed with just the spreadsheet and the numbers initially. And then I cocked it up. I cocked it up enough times to realize, damn it, it's actually about the people, right? If you get the people right. Yeah, imagine that. We always say, if you get the people right and you keep the customers happy, right, then actually the rest, systems integration, process and systems, governance, that has to happen. But though, if you've got the willingness and you've got your support of your clients, it kind of makes it easy. The only other thing but what I would say in terms of how to do it is, don't just take your business and slam the template on. Take some time, go still, review what's out there, have a cross-functional team, a guy from sales in the acquirer, a guy from sales in the acquiree, bring them together, review each other's businesses and processes, and really take time to then design. Because you'll find some stuff, actually, you're like, oh, you guys do that better. That's cool. Or that supplier, you've got better rates for. So, there's always a bit of give and take. And then really design that. Then I'd say validate and iterate. Make sure everyone, the key leadership in both sides they've looked at it, they see it, they get it, they bought into the integration mission. And only then you go into the implementation. What is it? I think it's a US. Is it the Marine Corps saying that slow is smooth and smooth is fast? And I think it very much applies to integration. That you try to rush it, it will take longer and it won't work. But if you take your time, where are we today? Where do we want to be? What are the changes? Is everyone bought into that? You can't over communicate. People are really nervous when a business gets acquired or merged. Is my job safe? Is my remuneration safe? Is my working practice, the fact I get the Friday each month off because that was part of the deal I had with my old boss. Make sure people are comfortable with all those first. Then you can sell. There's these exciting more opportunities. Rather than a team of one, it's a team of many. You want to go and do cyber? We've got a SOC. You can go to that. And that buy-in, you cannot over communicate, because these rumors will all be running around about, they're going to do this or they're going to do that. So I really think that plan, transparency of that plan, and communicate. Those are the key pieces for me.
No, I appreciate it. And I'll tell you what, let's get you back in a future quarter, maybe fourth quarter, just to check in. And I'll tell you why. I appreciate the framework you laid out. where I'm spending some of my day is, in fact, watching CNBC and the broad business channels. I'm assuming you have the same thing over there
Yeah.
on cable, and um, I just, this is just more of a hobby, but I really am interested in what's going on with the economy and the Fed and the rates and the inflation report that just came out. And I'll tell you, this probably is my fourth rodeo. I have seen these economic cycles before, and people get all forgetful.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's yeah. It's like history. What was it? It doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Yeah. I mean, how do you think then? I mean, do you think kind of valuation for MSPs are kind of peaked, and you think they're going to come down a bit now, or how do you
I
feel about
do. I do for a couple of reasons. One is at SMB Nation, we tried to bring together, and again, I've disclosed to you, full disclosure, I'm in the board of Moonshot Equity Partners out of Tampa. It's all good, but we tried to bring together a road show this early summer. The idea being a one-day workshop for MSPs that was a serious workshop, right? More
Yep.
akin to a Wall Street workshop and not a vendor fest. And I tried to sell into it by warning people, basically, guys, the world's changing very quickly. You need to go to this workshop now. Okay.
Yeah.
You need to go right now, because the window is open. And maybe I can now answer your question. Yeah, I think the window's closing, right? I've seen open closed windows, and it's closing now. It hasn't closed.
Yeah. The portal's getting smaller.
Yeah. And I do think you're going to see a decrease in valuations. In my opinion, it got a little frothy. And I know one or two people that sold, and God bless them. But yeah, I guess I'm an optimistic person, but I'm also kind of a bear when it comes to markets.
And look, I got to be honest. I think you're right. I mean, whilst the market's still pretty hot in the UK, what we've seen is last year there were a lot of MSPs trying to do deals themselves, and a lot of those guys have now disappeared. So now it's just sort of the professional acquirers, investors. So that is they were sort of right at the top of the frothy bit. They've sort of disappeared. Yeah, I think I agree with you on that.
All right.
Two bears. How boring.
Yeah, I got to bounce to my next Zoom. So we'll be in touch. Thank you very much, sir.
Cool, man. Thank you.
All right.